I set out to build this little probe, and what it does is it measures the moisture in the soil. So it's got these two wires that are separated by a distance. These are the sensors. I'm going to switch on the battery, and then here's a little LED that lights up. So let's point this LED towards you so you can see it just a little better. So when I take a wet finger and I touch the two probes, do you see how the LED lights up? So when you push the probe into the ground, the LED is going to light up more or less depending on how much moisture there is in the soil. And that is determined by how, if there's a lot of moisture, there's a lot of conduction between this point and this point in the soil. And so that lot of conduction results in the LED glowing. So the circuit has just got, now that's because this is still glowing because it's still wet. Now I've dried it a bit. So you'll see we had to drill 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5 holes. All it consists of is an LED, a resistor, a 2N222 transistor, and then a few wires and a battery box. So let's show you how we made this moisture probe. Well, hello all. Today I want to turn this dowel stick and this block of wood into a soil moisture sensor. So the first thing I'm going to do is drill a hole in the middle here, glue the stick in place, and then I want to tell you what circuit I'm going to use. So let's drill a hole in this block of wood. So that should fit in there. Let's just glue it in. So here's some alkaline wood glue. There we go. So we put that as straight as possible, and let's leave that to dry. I'm going to need a hole there, 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 there. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes that I'm going to drill. So there are the holes drilled in. We're just going to insert our transistor in there, our diode in there, and our resistor there. This is a 2N222 transistor. So if that's the flat side, that's the emitter, base collector. Emitter, base collector. Let's separate those legs and insert them. So there you see it inserted. Then the short leg of your diode goes to the negative, the longer leg goes to the positive. Then our resistor's a little long, the legs, so let's cut some of the legs off. And the resistor's going to go in there. So there is our circuit. Here is our battery box. It's got 2.8 volts. What I find is the leads are a little bit on the short side, so I just burn them. Soften that. This side goes to the negative, which is the black. So I'm going to put the black lead in here with the transistor as well and poke it in there. Then what I do is I take these little, they're like tacks, and they hold everything in. So I just push the tack in like that. So let's just show you what that looks like so far. You can see we've got a few tacks that are holding everything in place. And then all we need are our 2 probe wires, which I've got here, that are going to come to the collector and to the base. Now these probe wires need to be stripped. So what I do is I heat this like this, and then I just pull it off. So I've got this piece of plastic tubing. So I'm going to cut off a piece about so big and place it on the end of the probe. Now plastic is not going to conduct even if it gets wet. So there's the plastic on the end of our probe. And we're going to take the one end of the probe and wrap it around here. Now I'm not sure if we could wrap it twice, would be quite nice. And then wrap this twice around like that, and then we're going to tie it. So here is the one probe. And let's do the next one. So the next wire goes the same as the first, but just higher up. And these have got to be pretty tight. I may tighten them with pliers, that we don't want them to move when we poke them into the ground. And there it is. We'll just get a pliers to tighten that. So let's see if we can use this pliers to tighten. That feels definitely a bit tighter. Now this battery box is so annoying, and it's got to go on there. So let's get some glue and stick the battery box on there so that it's not throwing its weight around, so to speak. Right, I'm just remembering from our circuit, the probe has got to come to this particular, just before the LED. So there, our probe goes there. Let's stick the tack in. Now it's good to test things at all stages of. Then this side, the other side of the probe goes to the base. But the moment we put a wet finger between the probe, you can see the LED is coming on. So our wet finger is acting like the ground is going to act in our probe, and it's going to turn the LED on. The more micro scratches you can get, the better the glue sticks. There we go. Switch that off for now. Now that's glued on. So watch what happens as we push it into the soil. Do you see how bright it goes when the soil's, and there you can see it's in the soil and glowing brightly. So our sensor works. The only thing is one has to blow the soil off the base, off the actual sensor itself, before one can measure. And I'm going to about to poke it in. Watch how it lights up. If Christ had come in the 21st century, he may have used more contemporary parables. So I'm going to give it a go. To what shall I compare the new covenant? The new covenant is like unto Windows 11. The moment you bring out a new covenant, what does it do to Windows 10? It makes it old. So the moment you mention you've got a new Windows, that means you've got an old Windows. But like unto the covenants, Windows, the fact that you've got Windows 11 doesn't mean that Windows 10 is immediately obsolete. It doesn't mean that the people using Windows 10 aren't perfectly happy with their Windows. And in fact, like Luke 5 verse 38, I think it is, says that people who have tasted or who are involved with the old, Luke says if you drunk old wine, you don't immediately want new. If you're happy with Windows 10, you're not going to immediately want Windows 11. So in likewise, the people with the old covenant weren't particularly happy to upgrade. And if you're going to have Windows 11, you're probably going to have to upgrade your hardware a little bit. If you're going to enter into a new covenant, you need an upgrade in the form of the Holy Spirit. So there's your hardware upgrade. And what else can we say? Many of the features that you find in the new covenant, you won't find in the old. And you're going to find that if you do go to the trouble of upgrading to the new covenant or to Windows 11, you may find that there are certain things you couldn't do in the old that you can now do in the new Windows version 11. So to me, I see the old and new covenants as being like that, in that the moment you mention you got a new one, it means that the previous one is immediately old. And like, I think it was Paul in Hebrews 8 says, now if the old one had been perfect, there wouldn't have been space found for the new one. So if Windows 10 had been perfect, you wouldn't have needed Windows 11. So I think there's a lot of comparisons there between Windows 11 and Windows 10, but the main one I would like to emphasize is just because you got Windows 11 doesn't mean that all the Windows 10 users are now automatically unable to use, or that the Windows 10 is suddenly now out of date. I don't believe the old covenant is by any means obsolete. It's just old by comparison to the new, and it was fully functional in one stage, in one sense, but the problem was that the people found it hard to operate this old covenant, and they weren't exploiting the features. So the Bible basically says there was a fault with the old covenant users, not with the old covenant itself. So it needed an upgrade to the new, and that involved a hardware upgrade in the form of the Holy Spirit to help people. Instead of the covenant being written on tablets of stone, it's now written on people's hearts and minds, and they're helped to keep it through the Holy Spirit.